Well, I'll tell you what, since we're doing this double video, Josh, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself.
All right, well, what's going on, everyone? I'm Josh Guerrero. I am the host and founder of the All Around Adventure podcast. It's a travel and self-development podcast, but I am a little bit of a film connoisseur to some degree, and so I'm looking forward to being here and talking about this fantastic movie today.
Also an archaeologist.
Also an archaeologist, yes, I am.
And I'm John Cornelius, and I'm the host and founder of Classic Movie Reviews podcast. Retired archaeologist, and I'm excited to be talking to Josh about this movie that he really likes, and I really like it too. I think it's one of the great movies of all time.
And that movie just so happens to be The Princess Bride. And, well, this is a conversation kind of long in the making. Like, we've talked about doing this for a good while now, and here we are actually finally together to get this thing going.
Right. I just wanted to start out, Josh. I just thought of a question to throw out to you. Why do you like this movie so much?
Well, there's a lot of nostalgia to it. Growing up, like, I'm a child of the 80s, obviously, and this movie came out in 87. Growing up, I had distant cousins that would visit on occasion, and, whenever we did get together, this was kind of the movie that we would always just sit down and watch together. So there's ties to my childhood. And of course, being a little bit younger and watched the movie, I didn't really quite know exactly what was going on. I was just, kind of entertained by the adventure aspect, and, some of the characters, were pretty colorful as well. And then just watching the movie recently, getting ready for this conversation, I just found that this movie just really just holds up very well. It just really kind of stands the test of time. Like, even now with everything with CGI and so many things and the way movies are today, this movie still, I think, holds up. And just watching it, again, getting ready for this conversation, I still really enjoyed it. It's just a very good, long-standing movie.
Well, I watched it as an adult the first time, and I'll tell you, getting every joke, or most of the jokes, is a pretty exciting experience because it's a funny movie on a lot of levels.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So how do you want to handle this? We've talked about it, but we never talked about the structure.
Well, I think a couple things I think we could talk about is just, I think there's a really good mix to this movie as well. I think there's just a little bit of something for everybody, like, in here. So maybe we can kind of just talk about, like, the different aspects that come with it. I mean, we got adventure, we have a little bit of romance, as you mentioned. We have comedy. There's a lot of funny scenes in this movie too. And also the format's kind of interesting because, it's a format that we see in other movies, I'd say, but not quite too common. And that is that this is a story within a movie. And because it starts off, you have young Fred Savage, sick in his bed. Grandpa shows up with a book and reads him this story, and then we get to see the story, like, play out. So, which I don't know if that's done in very many other movies. Maybe you've seen some in your experience.
I haven't seen it done like that. Most of the Norm movies tell it in backtail. This is what happened in the past. But this with somebody coming in and reading the book, that great actor Peter Falk, who was Columbo for so many years, telling a story. Well, so how could you ask for more than that? And that's just the start of the movie.
Yeah, for sure. But, especially with me being, a traveler and an adventurer, I really like the adventure aspect that this movie brings. And I think this ultimately, maybe what it's classified as is an adventure movie first, with, like, elements of just like romance or anything like that. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Almost a fairy tale, I would think.
Fairy tale,
yeah.
Yes.
Fairy tale adventure, swords and, tights. Tights and fights.
Tights and fights, yes. Now, I'd have to say my favorite character, if we want to start talking a little bit about the characters in the movie and, what everyone can expect in this movie is, I think my favorite character has to be Inigo Montoya. And because you learn a little bit about him a little bit further on, like you hear about, like, his past, but then I think he develops a little bit throughout the movie where he starts kind of showing this real drive, this conviction, where he kind of comes off as, like, a little bit of an interesting character. You're not sure exactly what to expect. You've learned that he's a master swordsman and things like that, but then he's just so driven by this revenge that he has, and I hope I'm not going to give away any, like, spoilers. What you really see,
we're going to have lots of spoilers.
Lots of spoilers, but then you really see this at the end of the movie where, he just really just comes, like, to I'm not sure even like the word to use is just he's just so driven, I guess, and which you don't really expect that from him, I guess, early on.
He's going through almost the hero's journey, and then when he finishes it, he doesn't quite know what to do with himself. It'd be like Ahab if he'd really killed the white whale. What would he do now? Like, oh, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, and so let's see, the movie starts off with, we mentioned the grandson and the grandpa reading the book, and then it goes in. So it starts off on this farm. You got Buttercup, and then you got this has an interesting name for a character, and then just the simple farm boy, and then farm boy goes off, or they fall in love first, and then farm boy goes off. He's suspected dead, and then she somehow gets betrothed to the prince, Prince Humperdinck. I can't remember exactly how that unfolds, or if they even really explain that.
I don't think they do. And that woman that plays Jenny, of course, is Robin Wright. Mm-hmm. And she, I said Jenny. The woman that plays Buttercup is Robin Wright, and she goes on to play Jenny in Forrest Gump. Mm-hmm. Not a very kind character.
It's very different roles there. Yeah, we might have to do Forrest Gump next, because I just looking back about that movie too. I just realized that was her in Forrest Gump. She played Jenny. So, but then let's see. So it doesn't explain why she ended up getting betrothed to Prince Humperdinck. I mean, because he was speaking to the people saying, your future queen is a commoner amongst yourself, and so I guess how does a commoner actually get brought up to the status of royalty?
Yes, I just figured it was something with a glass slipper and a midnight ball or something like that.
Yeah, because plot, right?
Yeah, right.
because plot, and then so there was and so then Buttercup. Moving on, she is out riding her horse one day, because that was one thing that was brought up early on, like being on the farm. She rides horses every single day. It's like a hobby of hers. And she's in the woods, and then, 3 strangers show up, which one of them was Inigo Montoya that we talked about. And then we have Vicini, this, short guy, and then you got Andre the Giant,
right.
Of course, we're kind of dating ourselves a little bit, because Andre the Giant, rest his soul, has, been long passed away now.
Great wrestler, though.
Yeah, definitely. So they kidnap the princess, and they, put her on the ship. And what's hinted about this a little bit, in which you wonder what's sort of kind of going to develop from there, but Vicini, the mastermind behind this whole kidnapping, he wants to start a war, and
he's working for the prince, though, we believe.
Yeah, we believe he might be working for the prince, because you have I can't even think of the name of the 2 kingdoms that have Guilder, and then it's one like the main kingdom that they're in, or that it takes place. I think it rhymes with the Roman city, but which one?
It's Florentine, I believe.
Florin, yes.
Florin and Guilder.
Florin and Guilder, are the 2 kingdoms. Which you don't. No one from Guilder shows up throughout the whole movie. It's just we just know that it's there.
Just over there.
Yeah, and then they do make references to actual places. They make mentions to Australia, and then I think Africa or something like that too. They make reference to actual places out, not fictional places, but actual places out there in the world too later on as well. So it's pretty interesting. So we have so moving along, they kidnap the princess, and then this is where we actually kind of start getting more of the fairy tale element, because monsters start appearing too, because the shrieking eels in the water. Absolutely. Which actually, I thought the shrieking eels were pretty well done. As far as effects go and everything like that, though, too, they seem kind of convincing the way they had them slither through the water, and they were just these big, thick eels in the water, too.
And they had to flash back to the book to make sure that Fred Savage wasn't getting scared.
Yeah,
because of the shrieking eels. And then Indigo sees a light following them, mm-hmm. And that's, I think, the first time, or one of the many times, that Fezzik.
I think Fezzik is the giant's name, and I think Vicini is the leader.
One of the times he says inconceivable, which is which is leaked into our modern English language.
Yeah, inconceivable. So yeah, anyone who's like, seen this movie, that is definitely one of those one-liners that does just kind of stick with you from time. I'm sure you have you said that a couple of times.
Yes.
And yes,
You say that word a lot. I don't think it means what you think it means.
So we've done some work together out in the field before, and this has certainly come up a couple of times. Hence, ultimately why we came up with the idea to actually do this.
Right. If you ever do any archaeology work, you're either going to talk for 8 hours straight, or you're going to be silent for 8 hours straight, depending on who you're working with.
So as you can tell, we talked up a lot of ideas. So, all right. And then, so the light chasing them is a ship that gets closer and closer. And the reason why Vicini says inconceivable is because he felt that no one knew about his plan. He thought that, it was just probably some lowly fisherman just out there, fishing in eel-infested waters, which brought on the confusion there. So, and then we go to the Cliffs of Insanity, these massive, just tall cliffs. And conveniently, there's a rope there that I guess must have been pre-placed there that somehow stretches the whole length of the cliff because, again, plot,
Andre the Giant has to carry the three of them up?
There are three of them in this special harness, just one hand over the other. But then the other ship catches up to them, and it is this man clad in an entirely black outfit with a black mask and a black hood covering his head too. And he starts climbing the rope, and with almost superhuman precision too. He's not even using his legs; it's just one hand right over the other.
So the man in black can climb as good as the giant, or as strong as the giant, to get for the first.
Yeah, and then by the time the first crew with the giant, Fezzik, and Princess Buttercup and Inigo, they make it to the top. They start cutting the rope because the man in black was gaining on him the whole time because he was just so fast at climbing this rope. Right. And so they chop the rope off and then hoping that he would fall. And so they look over after cutting the rope and he's clung to the wall.
Free climbing the wall.
He's free climbing now. And then that's when the group decides that they need to kind of split up. Inigo stays behind, being the master swordsman, to basically just wait around to kill this guy, essentially, if he comes up to stop the pursuit. Well, Fezzik and Vicini, keep trying to escape away from the princess. So.
Yeah. And so when he does make it to the top, to make it a challenge, Inigo gives him time to rest. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the first two iconic lines, I think, in that scene is, I must know your name. I must know who you are. And the man in black says, get used to disappointment.
Yeah, and then also this is when Inigo asks a bit of an unusual question too. He says, "You don't by chance have 6 fingers on your right hand, do you?"
This way.
And then he's like, "Do you always begin conversations this way?" And then he tells them, "Well, my father he was slaughtered by a 6-fingered man," and that's when he revealed his hand and everything, and that's when you kind of start and then he tells the whole story about why he's on this path for revenge and everything like that, which was kind of an interesting scene just because, here you are, you're talking to a complete stranger that you're about to fight to the death. You're having this little break moment and you're revealing deep parts of your childhood where you watched your father die and, you tried to fight off your father's killer and he scars your face. And then, so it was an interesting scene, but it did kind of think, I think that's one of the things that made me appreciate Inigo as a character. That he's a man of the past. He's not just some lowly thief. There's a lot more to him than just what we first saw.
And so then they start the sword fight, and they're equally matched. They're both leaping through the air and trying different defenses and different offenses and going back and forth. And then Inigo starts smiling, and he says, "What are you smiling about?" And he says, "I'm not left-handed," and he switches the sword to his other hand. And then the man in black says, I have a secret too. I am not left-handed. And he switches back. So they were both such good swordsmen that they were going to fight each other left-handed.
Yeah, this was actually, I really enjoyed this fight scene as well. I've done martial arts in the past, not really quite fencing to a degree, but I really appreciated this, for the choreography, the footwork, and also the use of the terrain, because being that this scene was shot at the top of what appeared to be a cliff, it changes in elevation here and there, and they basically covered the entire set throughout this entire fight.
Exactly.
Scene,
kind of the arch coming down was reminiscent of the Robin Hood in his fight down the sword, down the stairway.
Yeah, and then so. But I guess should we just go ahead and reveal who ultimately won this altercation?
Oh yeah, this is totally everything's coming out.
Everything's coming out in this one.
Yeah.
Well, ultimately, the man in black was the victor, and this is at the point where Inigo, he drops to his knees and he just says, "Okay, go ahead and just kill me quickly and everything." But the man in black, you would think that maybe that's what he would be about to do, but the story's like, I'd much rather. I can't remember what he said he wanted to do, but I'd much rather do something bad than to kill an artist like yourself.
Break a stained glass work of art. Or something like
that's
that.
right. Break a stained glass window than to kill an artist such as yourself. And he says, "But since I can't have you follow me either," clocks him over the head with the hilt of his sword, and then he was out cold. And there he goes. He's off to try to catch up to the rest of the group.
Right, and he does catch up, and they leave Fezzik behind to hit him on the head with a rock. You go ahead.
Yeah, so Fezzik shows up, has this big rock, and then is hiding behind a boulder and just throws the rock. And then you see the man in black. He startles him. He draws his sword really quick, and then by the time he looks over, Fezzik already has another big rock in his hand. He says, "It's like I did that on purpose. I didn't have to miss you." So after a little bit of a dialogue exchange, the two men, now is you have the man in black and you have the giant, what they agreed to a sportsman-like battle, no weapons or anything like that, just bare fists, basically. And, and the man in black was reluctant to take the fight, because he's about to fight a giant, with his bare fist. And the giant, Fezzik, just says, "Well, hey, it's not my fault. I'm the biggest and the strongest. I don't even exercise."
He doesn't. He was just big. But so the man in black does get the best of the giant, and he chokes him and knocks him out. And as he leaves him knocked down, he says, "You're going to have a massive headache when you wake up. Sleep well and dream of big women."
Okay, so now at this point, he's taken out two members of this group that kidnapped the princess, and the one was the mastermind, Vicini. He catches up to him, and he is seated down on a log with the princess. Princess is blindfolded, and he has a little bit of a picnic-like spread out in front of him. He's got wine. He looks like, I think I saw some cheese on that plate too. And so here comes the man in black, and then Vicini draws a dagger and, is threatening, to stab the princess with it. And he says, "If you value her life, don't take a step forward." And then what the man in black does, he challenges this man to a battle of wits, because he knew that, okay, well, this guy no longer has his crew with him, but he's still got a dagger to the princess. And obviously the man in black at this point, we can tell he wants the princess alive. And so the battle of wits is that he brings out this poison powder from Australia called iocane, and then he says he's going to put it in one of the wine goblets. And so he grabs both wine goblets, brings it behind him, and you see him just do a little something. He brings it back, does a little switcheroo, and sets him down on the table. He says, "All right, where's the poison? Here's the battle of wits." This is where one of the funniest scenes of the movie. Vicini goes on this big tirade about why he should either choose either goblet too. And then this is also one of the one-liners where the man in black just says, "Truly, you have a very dizzying intellect."
I'm a criminal, so I would try to give you the poisonous class. But I know I'm a criminal, so I would take the poisonous class, hoping you would switch. So basically, and then during his whole tirade, he's like, "What in the world could that be?" And then you see the man in black turn and look, and then that's when Vicini switches the goblets. And then they both take a drink, and then, the man in black says, "You guessed wrong." And then Vicini's like, "You only think I guessed wrong because I switched the glasses, you idiot." And then he's laughing, and
So that's the whole kidnapping crew taken care of. And then the Man in Black takes the princess.
Right. Who's not very happy with him. I think she pushes him down a hill at one point. Tries to kill him.
And then he shouts, "As you wish." Now we didn't even bring that up at the beginning, right. But "As you wish" was something that the farm boy kept saying to Buttercup while they're on the farm, because she was
mean to him.
She was a little bit mean.
She was kind of Jenny.
Yeah, she's a little bit Jenny, in her character, just kind of bossing and pushing the farm boy around. But he would always respond with "As you wish." And so now here she is. She pushed this Man in Black down the hill, and he shouts, "As you wish," as he's tumbling down this big hill.
And instead of running down after him, she tumbles too. Ow, 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 ow.
Because she had realized that she just pushed the farm boy, Wesley, turns out to be his name, down this hill. And then after a little bit of romance, I guess, thrown in, and this was also the point where it flashes back to the grandson and the grandfather there, because it was a kissing scene.
Is this a kissing book?
Yeah, because I think at the time when this movie came out, or when this movie was filmed, I think Fred Savage was only like 11 years old.
Yeah,
so he was at that age where, like, a young boy would probably be a little bit repulsed by kissing in books and movies and stuff like that. So. And then from there, they see Prince Humperdinck, who's been following them this whole time. He's up on the hillside, so they retreat to this scary, spooky forest called the Fire Swamp.
Fire Swamp.
Yeah.
That sounds like a name you just want to stay out of it, just for the heck of it.
Yeah, and also, like, there was a little bit of a hint to it where Humperdinck sees them and says they probably won't survive the Fire Swamp. So you just wonder, well, what are they going to be up to next? And then there's some stuff that happens in the Fire Swamp. And, speaking from an archaeological sense, this Fire Swamp scene kind of reminds me a lot of when I was down in Big Cypress recently. Because Big Cypress, you have these isolated tree hammocks where it's very dense, and we had to hack our way through machetes to get to the sites that we needed to go to. And you see that in this scene too, where Wesley's going through. He's got his sword drawn, and he's got to cut away vines and things. So
I was doing a film called Border Incident the other day, and they were killing people and throwing them in a quicksand. And that was used in like 3% of the movies back at the time that was made in the 40s and 50s. And I mentioned that it reminded me of Everglades one time when I was wading up to my chest, holding my hands above to keep everything dry. Yeah, I was waiting for the quicksand.
Yeah, and so because there is a scene where Buttercup falls in like this quicksand, or they didn't call it quicksand like in the movie. It was called something else. I can't remember exactly.
3 Terrors of the Fire Swamp. It's lightning sand. Lightning sand,
yes. But then you see Wesley, quick on his feet, hacks off this long vine and literally dives head first into this lightning sand, and then and rescues the princess. But as they're down there, though, a pretty ominous looking creature scurries just past the hole, sniffing around, clearly human. Giant rat is.
Yeah, but you got one more. You got the fire.
Yes, the fire. There's these burds of fire that just pop up randomly around the fire swamp, and it's just. It's always preceded by a
popping, some kind of popping,
some kind of popping sound, but so there was a couple of close calls in there. We mentioned the lightning sand, and we also had Buttercup's dress gets caught on fire by one of these things too, because they didn't know what it was at first. They were like, hey, what's making that noise?
So Wesley explains that the 3 terrors of the fire swamp are the lightning sand, the fire spouts, and then the ROUSs. And he says, I don't think they exist, but
yeah, it was rodents of unusual size is what they were. And then all of a sudden, here comes one of these big giant rats that we saw earlier, tackles him to the ground.
Right, takes him down. And they're in it. He chews on Wesley's shoulder for a while as they fight around.
And then Wesley starts hearing the little pop, pop, pop sound again from the little spurts of fire, rolls this giant rat over, and then the fire ignites from the ground just as the rat's right over it too. And then lights him on fire, a couple of stabs with his sword, and then, he claims victory over this pretty, massive rodent.
So they know they can survive in the fire swamp because they've taken care of all 3 terrors.
Yeah, and then they do come out of the fire swamp, though, on the other side, but unfortunately they got Prince Humperdinck and his posse waiting for them on that other side. And then, Wesley's, he's ready to fight. He's got his sword drawn, except... and he's just ready to go into battle.
By now, she has told him his backstory since he got away. If you want to go ahead and tell that, or you want me to do it?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, he tells her in the swamp that he's the Dread Pirate Roberts. But the Dread Pirate Roberts had been robbing for at least 20 years before Wesley was born. So he can't do it. So what he does, the Dread Pirate will take everybody off his crew, except the next Dread Pirate Roberts, and he would bring them on, bring a new crew, and tell everybody that the new guy is the Dread Pirate Roberts. So he's been going on for like 60 years, and he's like the 4th one, or the 3rd one.
Yeah, definitely. And so that's one of the things that was kind of causing the confusion at first, because for a while, when he first caught up with Buttercup after taking out Vicini and the other two men that made up the kidnapping group. Filmed this for YouTube as well. There we go. We got it going again. So okay, all right. But either way though,
he looked exactly like Wesley the farm boy. So how would you not know that that's Wesley?
Yeah, and his voice and everything. Well, his personality was certainly probably a lot different than she remembered too, because again, like being on the farm, he was very subtle, very just easygoing, nonchalant. Where this time he's kind of arrogant, cocky, and obviously he's revealing himself as a brutal pirate here too. Right. So maybe it's just his personality. I'd say didn't really quite match what she had remembered. But so now that they've made it through the fire swamp, though, we'll fast forward back to that scene. Is that Wesley's ready to fight because he doesn't want Buttercup to be taken because Humperdinck is who she's now betrothed to, and
he wants to kill her.
Yeah, and he doesn't want her to have to leave with him. But then Wesley doesn't see it, but Buttercup does, that they're surrounded by archers armed with crossbows,
right,
who are just ready to just launch in at any second. And so she speaks up really quick and basically makes a bargain with the prince, saying, take this man back to his ship, revealing that he's a pirate, and then I'll come with you. And then so they agree. So Humperdinck agrees, and he and the princess, they ride away, and then the prince's right-hand man, who we revealed to, is Count Dugan, I think that's his name.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. I don't remember what his name is.
If someone else, if his name actually in fact would be different, I'm sure one of our listeners or our viewers will let us know in the comments. But I'll just say Count Dugan, I think, is his name. And he's the prince's right-hand man, or chief of staff, or however you want to refer to that as. And then, he's going to lead point on supposedly taking this pirate back to his ship. And then Wesley, walks up to him, and then he notices that this count has 6 fingers on his right hand. On his right hand. So now we have some things are starting to come together, because you see the count throughout the movie leading up to this point. Right. But this is the first time that we actually see his hand, and the fact that he has 6 fingers.
And of course, he betrays Wesley. Wesley says at one point, "We are men of action, lies don't become us." And so he's going to take him to the pit of despair. And the pit of despair is managed by an actor, Benny Hill, I believe.
The albino. The albino, yes.
And so he's been bitten by the rat, so he's wounded. And he's taken to the pit of despair and left there to be tortured.
Yes, and then because that was one thing that Wesley was confused about, because he's passed out, chained to this table, and he wakes up and he sees this albino character cleaning his wound, dressing his wound. He's like, "If you're just going to kill me, why are you bothering to heal me up?" And then he says that, the count likes his subjects to be healthy before he experiences on them. He's like, okay, so he's basically going to torture me,
right.
And then he says, I can deal with torture. And then the albino says to him, well, you've survived the fire swamp. You're obviously a pretty brave man. but no one down here is going to ever survives the machine. And so we have like a little bit of foreshadowing as to probably what's, going to come here. Something potentially very awful and diabolical.
Right. The first time he hooks the machine, he engages it, and he takes 10 years off of Wesley's life in excruciating pain.
Yeah, it was basically all these, like, there's this whole contraption. He's got like suction cups to the side of his head and to like other areas of his body. And he says, instead of sucking water, I'm sucking life. And I just suck some of your life away. And then it's just this. But of course, then the Count is all like trying to be scientific about it. He's sitting over at his desk. He's got his like little journal, and he says, "So now, be honest with me. How do you feel?" And Wesley's like, he's like, "Okay, interesting." So, and then starts writing away, recording everything. And then at this point, we're actually starting to near when Humperdinck and Buttercup are actually, due to be married, or we're leading up to their wedding date and everything like that. And she's kind of in, she starts having nightmares. She's kind of like in a little bit of despair because, she ultimately had to leave Wesley, like, out there in the forest and everything like that. She starts having nightmares, and she basically she goes right up to the prince. The prince is in his office, and she's like, "Look, I love Wesley. I always will. I don't love you. It's like, if you really insist that I'm going to marry you, you better believe that I'm going to be dead before that actually happens." And then the prince, in response, he says, "Okay, if this is what we'll do then, I guess. You write 4 copies of a letter. I'll send my 4 fastest ships, one in every direction, and we'll try to catch up to him on his ship. And then if he really wants to be with you and he comes back for you, then bless you both." And then, so she, but if not, can you please consider me as an alternative to suicide?
Prince Humperdinck is Chris Sarandon from Night Fright.
He's
a great actor, a great bad guy.
Yeah. So, and so of course, lo and behold, since he obviously did not keep his promise to, return Wesley to his ship, he obviously did not send like his 4 fastest ships to go try to do the letter. And then, but even still, like Buttercup was not, going to give up hope. She said, my Wesley still will come for me. And she actually gets in a little bit of a fight with the prince. Basically says, like, you can't break true love. You can't find it, not even with 1,000 bloodhounds. You'll never break it, not even with 1,000 swords. And this angers the prince. And then so he returns to the pit of despair. And then he like has a quick little dialogue with Wesley, who's still strapped to this machine. And then he cranks the machine all the way up to full blast. And then you just see this machine's just working frantically, and Wesley is just in excruciating pain, and he's yelling so loud that his screams reverberate throughout like much of the kingdom. And you see everyone just is turning to look like, where is that coming from? Even Buttercup is startled as to what it is. And then his scream also catches the ears of 2 other previous characters that we saw earlier in this movie, Inigo and Fezzik the Giant.
Right. And they been out of work since they've lost their mastermind. So what do you do when you're in revenge business, or you're in the brute gang business and you've lost your work? They decide to go look for Wesley.
Yes, because at this point, Inigo, like, kind of learned a little bit more. It thinks that, he still is on this revenge path, obviously, and he thinks that the Men in Black, because at this point he doesn't know who he is, he doesn't know that he's Wesley, and things like that. He decides that the Man in Black could be helpful in still like plotting his revenge, and so they go and they try to track him down into the forest, and that's where they find the Albino, who is got a wheelbarrow, obviously probably to wheel the body out of the pit of despair. And then you see Inigo draw his sword and says, "Where's the Men in Black?" And then the Albino's just standing there a little bit, like startled, a little bit scared. And he says, "Fezzik, go and jog his memory for me." And he does this little plop on the top of the Albino's head. And you see him, he just falls right on over. He just falls right on over. So, But how did they find the actual pit though?
And Indigo's a little frustrated, and he stabs a tree, and it opens the door in the tree that goes to the pit of despair.
Yeah, and so they go down into the pit of despair because yes, this is like an underground lair actually. So pit's not just a clever name; they're actually kind of like in a pit, like dug deep down in the ground. And then so they find the man in black, and or they find Wesley. And they see that he's been killed by this machine. He's no longer hooked up to the machine,
right.
And he's the only one down there. Humperdinck and the Count, they had all left. And this was actually like a secret lair too. Only the Prince, Count Dugan, and then also the Albino. They were the only three that knew that this place existed. Right. So, but then going back to a little bit more of the the fantasy and fairy tale type stuff. Inigo talks about a miracle, basically, that we need to go get ourselves a miracle. Like, Fezzik, how much money do you have? And so they find this like small like hut, like way deep out in the forest, knock on the door. Billy Crystal,
right? Who is Miracle Max?
Miracle Max, actually, it took a long time for me to realize that this was Billy Crystal. Like, because again, like, reason why I say this movie holds up so well is, the makeup and the costume and everything like that for him was like really, really done. You couldn't even tell that this was Billy Crystal. So, so Miracle Max is this old man who was a miracle worker for the king. And but he was fired by Prince Humperdinck once Prince was starting to rise up to power to start to take over the throne later on, and so the Prince fired him, but he needed to they needed Miracle Max at this point now to basically resurrect Wesley again, and and so there's but in order for Miracle Max to agree to actually cure Wesley, because he wanted money, and the Inigo and Fezzik didn't really have like quite enough to buy the miracle that they were hoping for.
And he's a broken man. Miracle Max is a broken man since the Prince threw him out.
Yeah, and so he says, I really need a very noble cause like to do this, and Inigo is like, oh, this is a noble cause, sir. His wife is crippled, and their children are on the brink of starvation. He's like, you're just a rotten liar, aren't you?
So they take a bellows and pump some air into Wesley, and then Miracle Max pushes on his chest, and he says,
"True love," or something.
To blame.
And then, so Wesley actually says "true love" when this happens, and then Inigo interjects again, and he says, "See, true love. You can't ask for a more noble cause than that." And then Miracle Max talks about how true love's the greatest thing in the world, but that's not what he actually said. He actually said to blame, which, we know to blame means to bluff. So he was actually probably just playing cards and he just cheated.
And so Miracle Max's wife, who's played fantastically by Carol Kane, comes screaming in there and calls him a liar. You're a liar, you're a liar.
Yeah. But then, she starts like screaming, like ever since Prince Humperdinck fired him, he's just been so broken and everything, and then but he doesn't like the name and everything like that. You can tell that, and this is where Miracle Max reveals his really deep hatred for Prince Humperdinck, because obviously getting fired by the prince, is something that never really left him. Right. And then Inigo reveals to him saying like, look, this man right here, he's the one that's like the true love of Prince Humperdinck, Prince Humperdinck's fiance. If you kill him, he'll stop the wedding. And this was the noble cause that Miracle Max was looking for, to actually go ahead and revive Wesley. And so they leave Miracle Max's.
Well, it makes him a pill that's about the size of a big jawbreaker.
Yeah, and with chocolate coating and everything. And you can tell, Inigo was a little bit confused. He says, wait a second, that's a miracle pill? But, they think that, and the chocolate coating was meant to go down a little bit easier because obviously Wesley they diagnose him as being mostly dead, and hence why he was able to, speak sort of after the little bellow thing that you see in the movie. And so from there they go to start storming the castle, basically. And there's only one way into the castle, is just this single gate. and they look in there, and then they see that there's 60 men.
Yeah, because the prince has doubled the brute squad.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So there's 60 men out there, which is more than what they had expected. And at this point, this is where they decide that, they're going to go ahead and just give the miracle pill to Wesley then. Because they actually had to wait, Miracle Max told them, you need to wait at least 15 minutes for full potency before you can give them the pill. So around this time, they went to at least get themselves to the castle first. But
they list their assets, and they have a wheelbarrow and a cloak of invisibility.
Yes. And then at this point, it was, they came up with this plan where Andre the Giant, he's the one that got this cloak. I don't know, they called it something. Was it a hologram cloak or something like that?
Yeah.
Or a
Holocaust cloak or something.
Yeah, and then so the plan that they had rigged up was to get into the castle, because even at this point, they didn't think if they just full on fought all 60 of these men that they would win. I mean, obviously, Fezzik felt he could maybe take on 10 himself, but there was a little bit of a something with this magic pill. Now, the magic pill worked. Wesley was revived. But the thing was, though, he was revived without any strength whatsoever. So he couldn't move his arms. He couldn't move his legs. He could barely shake his head, too. And so basically Fezzik had to nod his head for him and things like that. So how they decided to actually go about storming the castle was that Fezzik was the one wearing the cloak. He was standing in the wheelbarrow. And then he was facing all of these men guarding the castle. And at this point, night had fallen. And then so they start wheeling them there. And then Fezzik starts trying to impersonate that he is, in fact, the Dread Pirate Roberts. And with this deep, obviously he's got this really deep voice that is striking fear in front of all the guards that are in front of the gate.
So all of them run away except the one guy with the key.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give a key to the guy on the outside. That's a little advice for life.
Yeah. So, and then but leading up to getting to the guy with the key, though, they had this cloak was a flammable cloak but still protects the person wearing it. So they light them, and Fezzik is on fire. So basically, you got this big fiery hooded entity in front of you, and that's what's really getting everyone to scatter and scare away. So they didn't actually have to fight anybody to get there. And then conveniently enough, though, the one guy out of all 60 of those men is the leader of the whole group, and he's the one that actually has the key. So and actually this is where one of this is, I think, probably my favorite scene in the movie, because it's kind of funny. They get this guy up against the gate, and then Wesley, he's give us the gate key, and the guy's I have no gate key, and he goes hey Fezzik, go and tear his arms off. It's you mean this gate key? So and then at this point they made it into the castle at this point.
I believe they take Wesley to the prince's bedroom and lay him on the bed because he's still mostly dead.
Yeah, and then this is also finally when Inigo comes face to face with Count Dugan, the man that ultimately killed his father, 20 years prior. And
it doesn't go exactly like Inigo thought it was going to go, right?
No. Well, for one, because now leading up into this point, Inigo had been practicing a line that he wanted to say to this man if he ever saw him again. He's been practicing this line, saying it over and over in his head for the past 20 years. And he says, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." And then he finally says it to this man. And then instead of this epic sword battle that we thought we were about to see, the man, Count Dugan, turns around and runs away. And then so he's running away. Inigo goes after him, and after a little bit of a quick foot chase, the Count Dugan is running down the spiral staircase. But before he makes it to the bottom, he stops at one of the last steps, and he draws a dagger from his boot, and then he retreats into this kind of open, looks like it's some sort of a dining hall or something like that. And as soon as Inigo makes it to the bottom, Count Dugan throws this dagger across the room, and it gets impaled right into Inigo's stomach, or right into his gut.
Right. So then he goes and he stabs him in each of his arms, stabs him in his legs, I believe.
He might. I definitely know each shoulder. Like he tried. What happened is that Count Rugen had tried to stab him in the heart, but he parried with his rapier, and he got stabbed in both shoulders. But then this is where he gets like the big burst of energy, and this is kind of what I talked about.
Mocks him.
Yeah, because the guy mocks him and says, "Ooh, you must have been that Spanish brat that I dealt with all those years ago." And then said some things about his father, and then and that's when Inigo finds like a little bit of strength, and that's why I kind of liked again the development of the character, because when you first meet Inigo early in the movie, he just seems kind of like this oddball misfit, like so to speak. But then you actually see, like, not only is he a skilled master swordsman too, but a true man of conviction, because even though he was just stabbed in the gut with this knife, and then also stabbed in like both shoulders, he just gets up and he starts fighting again.
Right. He returns to the fight, and he does kill the one-armed man that murdered his father 20 years ago.
Yep, and then and that was there. Meanwhile, while he was fighting, there was some stuff happening with the other characters elsewhere in the castle. Now, Buttercup, after the wedding ceremony, which actually, I think maybe we should talk about the wedding ceremony pretty quick too. I'm not sure why we skipped over that, because that was a funny scene.
So Peter Cook, what's that guy's name?
Peter Cook, the one that was the
priest.
Yeah, the priest that was doing it. Yeah. So
marriage.
So they're in the church, getting ready to proceed with the wedding, and then you have the priest turns around. He's in his full garb, just looks like he's just ready for like a huge royal wedding. And, looks really serious around the room, calms everyone down, and then he starts speaking.
Marriage is the reason we are here today.
And then it was at this point, this is when the whole storming of the castle was going on. And then Humperdinck's like, just hurry up and just skip to the end, because, he wants this wedding to be over, because he knew that whoever was storming the castle, it had to have been Wesley, because even though he thought he had killed him, he just couldn't help the possibility that maybe Wesley survived somehow. And so he's trying to hurry up the wedding.
Say I do.
Yeah, he's like, say, it's like man and wife, just say man and wife already. And then he's like, man and wife. And then at this point, so this is where, he like parts ways with Buttercup, because he has to go see to like other arrangements or something like that, or like an escape or something along those lines. Buttercup retreats to her bedroom, and she sits at her table and she draws out this long dagger, and she's getting ready to stab herself till Wesley interjects, who is plopped like on her bed.
Right, it was Buttercup's room.
Yeah, and so she is so excited to see him. She goes over, and then she starts, kissing him, and she's like, how come you're not going to hold me? And this is at the point, Wesley still doesn't have any strength.
No arm movement.
Yeah, no arm movement. And that's when, shortly afterwards, Humperdinck comes into the room. So you want to break down this scene?
Well, it's been a real long time, but Wesley bluffs him, basically. He tells him, yes, and Humperdinck says, yes, I know you're going to kill me. No, we're going to fight till the...
Well,
to the pain.
To the pain, yes.
The pain.
And the pain was he says he's gonna take out his eyes,
cut his nose off, cut his ears off.
Yeah. Well, ultimately the ears he would have gotten to keep.
Oh, right, because he could hear the children shrieking when he came by. Right?
Exactly. So, but basically all of this was a stall tactic, though, because
his arms still weren't working.
Yeah, and then but somehow though he manages to stand up just a little bit, and he just has this like proud look on his face, like he's ready to go to war. Yeah. Basically, he holds out his sword and he just says, "Drop your sword." And then you see Humperdinck, he's got this like kind of freaked out look on his face, drops the sword, and he's like, "Now go ahead and have a seat." And he like skips. That was kind of funny too. He tucks up his robe. He tucks up his robe and he goes and he skips to the chair. And then this is when Inigo hears them, and then he shows up too, and then they tie the prince up and everything like that, and then this is when at this point you kind of wonder, well, where's Fezzik in all of this, because
Right.
Inigo was out trying to battle Count Dugan, and then we have Wesley, who was made his way to Buttercup's bedroom, and then turns out Fezzik, though, he left to go out to the castle courtyard and to the stables, where he found 4 white horses. And he was saying that I better get 4 horses in case we ever find the lady.
Because there are 4 of us.
There's 4 of us. And that's when Inigo says, Fezzik, you actually did something right. because at this point, like throughout the movie, though, Fezzik was just kind of like, more or less, like people were like wanted him around because of his brute strength and everything like that.
Not so much for his brain.
Not so much for his brain. And then it was also at this point where they all jump from this like 3rd-story bedroom window and then
float down to the horses.
Float down all gracefully and everything. Which I think if I like jumped down from like a 3rd-story like window, and I'd probably just be frantically kicking and
Not
screaming.
to mention the horse you landed on top of.
Yeah, and then and then at this point, like the only 2 remaining up in the bedroom, you have Wesley and you have Inigo. And then they just kind of have a quick exchange, and then Inigo says, I've been in the revenge business for the last 20 years. Now that it's over, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do now. And then Wesley turns to him and he says, have you ever thought about piracy? You'd make a great Dread Pirate Roberts. Right. And you see him, he's like, okay, yeah, I guess so. and then we're just about to the end of the movie.
Right. It returns back to the bedroom where the grandfather is reading to the grandson, and the grandson, asks his grandfather to come back, and the grandfather replies, "As you wish," which is meaning "I love you."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because and then we'll circle back all the way to the beginning really quick. Here is that this. That was when every time Wesley would say "as you wish," eventually, like as the 2 of them came closer together while on the farm, that was his way of saying "yes, I love you." And then eventually, and she picked up on it, kind of like their own like unique love language.
Right.
And then so that's how the movie wraps up.
And then if you haven't seen this movie, go out and get it right now. Download it and watch it. It's the funniest thing.
Yeah, like I said, in this movie, again, just has a little bit something for everyone, because it is an adventure story with some comedy, like, thrown into it, some colorful characters. We also, got a little bit of a romance, but at the same time, though, like the romance wasn't like, too overwhelming. This wasn't a rom-com by
Right.
any means. It was just, it was in there, but, it was balanced out really well, I'd say.
It's got pirates. It's got giants. It's got castles.
And monsters.
What more can you ask out of one movie?
Yeah, and again, just we're talking that this movie came out in '87, I believe. So we're talking like over 30 years now that this movie has come up, and it's. But again, I just still think it's one of those movies that stands the test of time well, and I think it probably will continue to do so, because even again now, like. Just watching it again, just recently to prepare for this, is just, I'm like, I still enjoy this movie.
Yeah, it's always fun.
Yeah, definitely.
It's still, every time that giant rat jumps on Wesley, after he says, "I don't think they exist," and bow, it hits him right there. I laugh like a crazy person.
Yeah, and also like you even see some of the actors even just now. I think Robin Wright. We talked about her appearing in Forrest Gump. She was in that movie that came out a couple of years ago. She was in it was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I don't know if you saw that movie, but yeah, she was in that one. Carrie Elwes, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Elwes, yeah.
Yeah, Elwes, yeah. He was recently in season 3 of that Netflix show Stranger Things. Yeah, he played the town mayor in that one. So, and then in Inigo Montoya, which
Mandy Patinkin.
Yeah, he is. He plays one of the lead roles in Showtime's series Homeland.
Which a new season just started of that.
Yeah, and at first I didn't know that, because you see Inigo Montoya, he's got like long, like, what kind of wavy hair, and then, clean shaven face. And then as his character portrayal of Saul Berenson and Homeland, short hair, full beard,
Right.
and everything. So a bit of a contrast. I didn't know it was him at first, but
I still think Mandy Patinkin's best role was in Alien Nation, playing the alien. He was the alien cop.
the alien cop.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, Alien Nation is great. These aliens, they're on a slave ship basically, and they escape, overpower the ship, and come to Earth. So they have to assimilate like 800,000 of them, and they become police officers. And this one kind of James Caan, kind of a racist cop, is paired up with one of the aliens.
Ah, I see. Okay. So, but yeah. So.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. We're
Yeah.
probably getting on up there about an hour, so this is long. I'm John Cornelison. Come see my stuff over at Classic Movie Reviews Podcast. The website is classicmovierev.com. Come over to Josh. He's doing some really exciting things with travel, and tell him a little bit about what you do, Josh.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So my show is the All Around Adventure Podcast. It's a podcast along with a travel blog. It's a little bit of an interesting, I'd like to say it's interesting because, of course, I'm a little bit biased because it's actually like my creation, but I include a self-development twist to it because I've come to find that just, traveling and just what I've gotten to experience, like, even now, just traveling in and around here in the Southeast with my job as an archaeologist is, I'm just learning so many valuable life lessons along the way with my experiences. I've come across many other travelers who have been experiencing the exact same thing. So been welcome on the podcast, hearing their stories, hear the life lessons that they've learned. And, I think it's a really good show. I've had a lot of, amazing guests so far, and I will continue to do so. And if you'd like to, see my show, you can find me at allaroundadventure.com. I'm also on social media. Instagram and Facebook is at allaroundadventure, just one word with no dash. Twitter is a little bit different. It's all around Advent there. I couldn't quite fit the URE because Twitter doesn't allow for very long usernames. So all around Advent over on Twitter. But, do feel free to connect with me, if you, enjoyed this episode. And, I guess also just, give us some feedback. Let us know what you think.
We'll do it again if you like it.
All right. So thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.